through an online course on which they posted their responses to the discussion prompts. So do you have any questions about the background so far? яғни контекст бойынша сұрақтарыңыз болса айтсаңыздар болады. All right.
No, so far, no questions.
Okay, thank you. And in order to discuss my data that I want to share with you, I would like to adopt one of the features of the discourse analysis framework for sociocultural discourse analysis specifically. And in that framework for analyzing identity work, I want to focus on indexicality. And by indexicality, I mean a mechanism through which language is used for constructing identity positions, right? And I'm sure that you know what identity is. Identity is something that you use to position yourself and position others, right? For example, again, I shared some of my identities earlier. I consider myself a PhD student who is international, who is racialized, who is multilingual, right? And all those things are identities. And you may identify as a woman, right? As a Kazakh person, as someone from Shymkent, as someone who teaches English to students, right? So all those are identities or identity categories. And this mechanism works by semiotically connecting linguistics, by semiotically connecting linguistics forms to social meanings, right? So you have to connect whatever you say, like English teacher, to some social meaning of that word or phrase. And all of this draws on the scholarship of Bucholtz Hall, Auezov, and Silverstein, and other scholars. And specifically, Bucholtz and Hall identify specific categories or strategies for using indexicality. And they say that identity relations emerge in interaction through several related indexical processes, including overt mentions. For example, you can say, oh, I am Kazakh, right? So that's an overt mention of your identity, right? And you can also use implicatures and presuppositions regarding one's own or others' identity position. For example, you can hint at certain entities, right? So you can say, I'm from Shymkent. You're not really saying, I mean Shymkent. Yeah, so like that's like something slightly different. And then you can also display, or you can use some displayed evaluative and epistemic orientations to ongoing talk, as well as interactional footings and participant roles. And there's also the use of linguistic structures and systems that are ideologically associated with specific personas and groups. By that, I mean, for example, if you have a specific dialect of Kazakh, I don't really need to ask you where you are from, right? So if you use some language that's specific to the south of Kazakhstan, I will know that you're from there if I know that language, right? Or if you hear somebody from Batz Kazakhstan, you will know that they are from there even without them telling you, right? So that's something you can use to guess someone's identity or certain things that are ideologically associated with a specific identity group. Any questions about this framework? Сұрақтарыңыз болса айтыңыздар. Яғни мен түсіндірген себебім осы структураларды қолдана отырып, бір данныйларды анализ жасағым келіп тұр ғой сіздермен бірге. So, okay. If you don't have any
okay. No, any questions? Yeah.
All right, so let's go. So what do I want to do? Sorry?
Everything is clear in this part. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So
the indexicality is a interesting note. I have just opened for myself this now.
Awesome. Yeah. If you have any questions about the framework, I can also share some literature. But I think that overall, this is like a very clear overview of the framework, right? So indexical. яғни кез келген сөз кейбір мағынаның индексі болуы мүмкін да сонда. It's like the same as in any kind of other situation. Okay, let's go. So using that framework and also the context of my study, I want to answer a few questions. So the first question is, how is the teaching assistant's feedback to EAL teachers indexical of his identities? And in this case, as you can tell, the teaching assistant is me, right? And my students are the EAL teachers, and I'm talking about my identities, right? So how are those identities seen in my feedback? And then how do my identities shape my feedback? Basically, that's the second question. And again, the reason I'm interested in these questions is because, again, I do not see feedback as something neutral, right? So whenever you are giving feedback to your students, you are coming from a specific position, right? And at some point, I think that I decided to kind of explicitly draw on my identities in order to give feedback to my students, rather than just saying, good job, this is bad, this should be done that way, right? So those are very authoritative, I guess, and kind of dry feedback strategies, right? And I'm not saying that they should not be used at all, but in some cases we can be a bit more personal, and we can draw on all these personal elements as teacher educators, right? As people that teach future teachers. So let's discuss the discussion prompt that we gave to the students during the second module. So the second module was delivered during the second week, as you can guess, right? And for the second week, we invited, so this is something we shared with the teachers, basically. We invited the teachers to share one or more of the questions. We wanted them to answer one or more of the questions here. So 1, 2, 3, right? So 3 questions. And we wanted them to relate these questions or their answers to the learning materials, readings, videos, and online resources that we shared in the module itself. So by learning materials, we mean the overview of the module and the theories that we discussed, right? And then the readings were provided to them as appendices or PDF files, and the videos and online resources were also shared in the overview of the module. So the second module was about the varieties of English, including world Englishes, right? And we wanted them to discuss some features of the variety of English used in their place. So for example, I just want to give you an example in this case. What kind of variety of English do you guys speak, dear colleagues? So you can think about that, right? You can also use different texts and images to illustrate some of the features of your language. For example, for this question, you would need to think about the variety of English used in Kazakhstan, right? Because our English is not the same as the English used in Uzbekistan or South Korea or Latin America or anywhere in the world, right? And then for the second question, we asked them to discuss Ziegel's piece about Pidgin and Creole. So these are some types of language varieties, right? And I'm sure that you know what this is. So we wanted them to talk about their own beliefs about the variety of English that they speak and how they assess its suitability for teaching, right? So for example, how do you assess the suitability of teaching your variety of English in Kazakhstan? Do you think that it's good enough or not? Why? Why not? So those are the questions. And then for the third question, as you can see, we wanted them to discuss Bolton's pros and cons of using Katru's categorization of world Englishes. And Katru is a scholar who famously categorized Englishes into concentric circles, right? Inner circle and the middle circle. I'm not sure about what the name is, and then there's the outer circle. And guess where we are as people from Kazakhstan? Do you think we are in the inner circle or the outer circle? We are in the outer circle, right? Because we don't use English as our second language or first language, right? We use it as a foreign language. So we wanted them to reflect on their views towards world Englishes and how world Englishes and English as a lingua franca may affect the teaching of English in their specific context. And for example, in this case, they had to think about Chinglish, Spanglish, Panglish, Japanglish, Konglish. So in our case, what would it be? Konglish? Yeah, I don't know. I think that we could say it's Shala Kazakh or something like that, right? So do you think that those varieties should be allowed in the teaching context, right? And again, so let's go now to my feedback. So I did not include the comments that or the post that our teachers provided, right? Instead, I'm focusing on my feedback, as you remember, because the questions are related to how my feedback is indexical of my identities and how my identities shape my feedback. So I want you to take a look at the feedback here. So one of the students or EAL teachers shared their comment, right, in which they discussed something from the list here. So, and let's get into it. So first of all, I started by thanking them, as you can see, and then I also stated how crucial it is to be aware of the variety of English that you speak, right? And then you can see that I mentioned something very important here. So do you see this word highlighted here? I'm saying we teach, right? So by this, what am I trying to do here? I'm trying to establish this like kind of commonality between us, right? I am positioning them as my colleagues, right? So I'm basically saying, oh, I am also a teacher. We are both teachers. And by that, I'm trying to kind of establish the fact that this is not addressed just to that person, right? To that teacher. It's also something related to me. And equally important to them. Okay, so now we can take a look at the second paragraph here. And again, when I say teachers should be aware of the languages in the classroom, I'm not talking about some other people, right? I am including myself in this group of teachers, right? Because I already positioned myself as part of the community. And yeah, and I also say that it's nice to give more agency to students in their learning. So basically, in a way, I'm saying that I also do this as a teacher myself, right? And I'm also saying that we can always learn from our students. So basically, I'm also positioning myself as a learner rather than an authoritative figure in the classroom, right? Because as teachers, we are not just giving people some knowledge, right? We are co-constructing knowledge with our students, and I hope that teachers continue doing so and position themselves as equal learners in the classroom rather than just people that are imparting knowledge on their students, right? And in the next paragraph, I continue using a similar strategy. And I clearly state that while it's unrealistic to learn all the languages if you teach a super diverse class, we can always arrange students in groups that have something in common, right? So I think that I'm kind of clearly stating my stance regarding teaching in super diverse contexts. So in Kazakhstan, let's think about Kazakhstan. Do we teach super diverse classes? Do we teach students that don't know our languages? I think that it's uncommon, right? We know the languages of our students, right? So we speak Kazakh, we speak Russian, and there might be students who speak Uzbek and some other languages. In that situation, I guess some of us know the language, some of us don't, right? But I also know that right now, Auezov University has students from abroad, right? Azerbaijan, India, even I'm
China
not sure about
also,
India.
China, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Also
Yeah.
from Pakistan, for example. Yeah, this year we have a lot of many international students.
Mm-hmm.
China, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan.
Mm-hmm. So I think that then we can kind of relate to that struggle of teaching a super diverse class when as teachers or as teacher educators, we do not know all the languages in the classroom, right? So what can we do in that situation? We can, again, I'm saying that we can always arrange students in groups based on some commonality or common feature. And again, I'm trying to suggest certain strategies for solving an issue at hand, right? And again, I'm positioning myself as part of the teaching community here because I can sympathize with my colleagues who are sharing their story here, right? And I'm also positioning or like posing a question at the end of my feedback because I want them to like have some food for thought, I guess, right? So this is something important. And I'm asking the teacher here if they think there are ways students with different, if they think there are ways students with different language backgrounds can learn from each other. So basically, this is something they did not address, I guess. So I'm just kind of asking them to further think about this topic, right? So anything you notice in addition to me being part of the community here, like, do you see any other identities signaled in this feedback? Let me know if there's anything.
Yeah, here you mean in terms of cultural diversity. I don't know, based on background, family values, because we are now talking about cultural diversity. Because again, it's about multiple and multilingual actually environment, right? So this is actually it makes sense what you are talking actually. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah, I
always,
think-
you know, challenging to deal with the, you know, such kind of, you know, such groups, yeah, which, you know, I used to have some experience actually with such groups before, yeah, and in UAE, yeah, I used to work in an educational center, yeah, educational, and
Mhm,
there I used to deal with the diversity of culture, as you have mentioned, yeah, and it's not easy, just, you know, and now you are talking about also to divide them, yeah, into groups, yeah, and divide based on their common things, yeah. What do you mean here? You mean like based on their
this
religion or what else?
So basically one of the challenges related to the pedagogies or the world Englishes here was that some of the students just don't understand each other at all. And I suggested that, of course, I'm not saying that they should always be divided according to their categories, right? But it's an opportunity for them to kind of find someone similar to them and maybe feel a bit more comfortable while completing certain tasks. For example, if they share a common language, like if they speak Russian, let's say, right? They can be grouped together and help each other to complete certain tasks. And if they are, for example, culturally similar, let's say there are students from Ukraine and Kazakhstan, they are culturally similar because of our shared Soviet history, right? And
Yeah,
I think
CIS
that
countries.
exactly. Those things could be leveraged in the classroom to kind of put students at ease and maybe to kind of socio-emotionally support them while working on the academic tasks, right? Because again, it's not just about getting marks and moving on. You need to feel included in the classroom. And this was one strategy that I suggested. Yeah, although that's not the focus of my discussion today, but that's what I meant here. Also, I noticed that I mentioned this unfair bias, and I'm saying that it seems almost impossible to remove that bias here, right? But we can always
Because it's always, you know, we as human being, I think we have some biases, you know, because towards
exactly.
our daily life, even, you know, it's we will be always, I mean, engage with such biases, I think.
Exactly. And I think that by saying this, I'm also positioning myself as someone who is actively working toward addressing these biases myself. And I'm also inviting my colleagues to do the same thing, right? Because I'm saying that we need to be critically aware of how we are engaging with languages and so on. All right. I think it's time to move on to the next feedback. So again, there is some repetition across my feedback, right? Because this was all in one forum for comments or discussion posts by teachers on the same topic or similar topics. And here I'm praising the teacher, first of all, by thanking them for their thoughtful responses to the questions, right? And again, I use this pronoun here and state that I'm part of the community in which they are in, right? And then I also position ourselves as teachers as role models for students, right? So, and I'm basically saying that I also consider myself as a role model for my students in the classroom, and I am positioning them as role models. And I think that here I'm also inviting them to kind of share their own linguistic repertoires and how their linguistic repertoires include different varieties of English, right? So basically, I am positioning myself as a multilingual or translingual person here whose linguistic repertoire includes different Englishes or different languages. And also here I am kind of, I guess, preparing them for something that may sound harsh. And I'm saying that we as teachers can be agents of change, positive change, right? Or cogs in the wheel who continue perpetuating the same problems that we have in the system or the education system. So basically, I guess, positioning myself as an aspiring agent of change. I don't want to call myself an agent of change because that's a big term, I guess. But I am hoping to be one here, right? And I'm also, I guess, inviting these teachers to be agents of change here. And then I'm saying that in case we choose to take a more socially just approach, right? And by doing this, we can be agents of change, right? And also be less prescriptive. It is possible to help students shift their wants and needs away from the hegemonic English variety. So I guess by saying this, I'm also letting them know that I usually use socially just approaches to teaching, right? And I'm less prescriptive. So because I couldn't possibly, I mean, I could, but I don't think I would be talking about all of this if I did not really practice this myself, right? So in a way, I'm saying, oh, by the way, I do this. So, and I also invite you to be like that too. And also here I am saying that I'm a teacher who chooses or promotes these values, right? Being socially just and less prescriptive in the classroom. And by hegemonic English variety, I mean that some of our students want to speak British English or American English or something similar, right? Because they don't want to hear anyone with a strong Kazakh accent or Russian accent, right? And I think it's a very common issue. And here I am saying that these teachers need to address those issues and discuss those matters with their students and promote socially just approaches to teaching English, because no matter how hard you try, you are still going to be seen as non-standard English speaker in Kazakhstan or any other context, unless you come from those privileged contexts, right? Or unless you look a specific way as a teacher. So next, I think I noticed one more thing here. So again, I'm highlighting one pedagogy here as something that should be practiced, right? So basically by promoting this, I'm also positioning myself as someone who does use this or wants to use this pedagogy, which is culturally sustaining pedagogy. And I think I provided a reference later on at some point, but I guess not here. But this was linked to a scholar called Alim, Alim, who teaches at Stanford. But yeah, as you can see, I was trying to provide certain references related to the terms that I was using so that teachers can take a look at these references and read more about being an agent of change or a cogger in the wheel, right? So that's all for this feedback, but let me know if you notice anything else. All right, let's move on. We don't have too much time. So the next one is a pair of two, right? As you can see, feedback 3 and feedback 4. So in the third feedback, I quoted something, right? Oh, yeah, it's sad that none of these variations are reflected within our government, blah, 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 blah. And I think one of the reasons I was quoting this was because I don't really consider it my government, because in Canada, I am an international student who is a visitor,
excellent.
right?
Yeah.
So by that, I guess I'm also taking the position of a visitor in Canada, because I cannot claim that it's my government, at least yet. But this is something that the teachers can say easily because they're Canadian citizens, right? And this is something that teacher provided in their reflection. And then I'm saying, oh, through your own example, you are definitely empowering students to practice their variety of English and so on. So by this, I'm also promoting this practice of empowering students, right? And also I'm saying that I do that too. So that's, I think, all I can see here for now. I'm sure that I could dig deeper, but that's for now enough, I think. And here, and I'm saying that I could relate to so many things you mentioned. So basically, I'm positioning myself as someone similar to this teacher here, right? So I think that it's very important to make these teachers feel seen and similar to you in some way, right? Because I'm not really treating these teachers as students who don't know anything or who are doing something wrong, right? I'm just saying, oh, yes, I understand you so well. I went through the same thing. So I'm being emotionally supportive, I guess, in some way. And here I talk about certain language ideologies that persist in our society, right? Which is neoliberal and capitalist and so on. And I'm saying that people go to different lands to get closer to the privileged standard native English speakers language. And I'm saying it makes us think any non-standard English is a problem rather than a gift. And I think that here, in some way, I'm criticizing myself as well, right? Because I guess, could be categorized as a non-native English speaker, but I also problematize the fact that I was in some way aspiring to get closer to this native speaker English, because I think that's something promoted very actively in Kazakhstan and English medium institutions in Kazakhstan and abroad, right? Because we want to I guess, imitate people who sound white, who sound American or British, who come from specific social classes, right? Upper middle class or rich people. So all of those things are implicitly criticized here. And I'm also reflecting on my own problematic practices, right? And then here you can see that I am sharing my own positionality very clearly. I'm saying, as a teacher who has learned English as an additional language, here I'm positioning myself as an EAL learner, right? English as an additional language learner. And I'm also positioning them, the teacher in this comment, as an EAL learner, because they clearly stated that in their own comment. And I'm saying, so as a person who understands your students, how can you build on your experiences to help students, right? To see their own English as something like a resource rather than a problem. Yeah, I know it can sound very emotional, but I think that for me, the point was not to give some very objective feedback that just harshly marks these teachers, right? But rather make them think and make them reflect and make them change toward something socially just in their teaching, right? So that's all. Let's move on because we don't have too much time, but there will be some space for discussion later, right? And this is almost the last one. Okay, so this is the fifth feedback. And you can see, yay, Kazakhstan. So here I clearly state that when I was in Kazakhstan, I did something, right? And by this, I think I am positioning myself clearly as someone from Kazakhstan, as a Kazakhstani, as some people like to say, and you can maybe also see the spelling of our country's name.
Latin.
Yeah, because I don't like using the K version, Kazakhstan, because that's a colonial version of our country's name, right? And I was really, yeah, I was using the like P sound, the letter here. And a lot of people ask me about that, but I'm never tired to respond to them. And then I would always tell my students that is only one variety of English. So here I am saying that this is something I do, and I guess this is something they should do as well, right? So I am positioning myself in a way as a speaker and knower of world Englishes rather than just single correct version of English, basically. Because to me, standard British English is not a goal. It's just one variety of English that we are exposed to through textbooks and teaching materials that we engage with, right? And again, I position myself as part of the community by using a pronoun here, right? I'm saying we. That's all for this one. And this is the last one. This is the last individual feedback, right? Here, I am saying, oh, I'm glad you are finding the reading helpful, or the reading's helpful. Your comment about this rubric gives me hope. So here, I think I'm kind of signaling that I am a hopeful teacher, and I believe in a bright future for this teacher, I guess, at least, right? And here, I'm not just a teacher, but also like a teacher educator, because I'm working with teachers, right? And then here I'm saying, after all, the focus on eliminating accent that is not standard promotes a deficit model in education and makes multilingual students feel even more insecure and alien. Someone different or someone detached from me. I am also part of that community, right? I am also a multilingual student who has some experiences of feeling insecurity and alienated, right? For my identity as a multilingual, especially in the Canadian context. So basically, I'm inviting them to steer clear from this practice. And I also share that I can relate to the comment about Russian English, because they were talking about someone with like a strong Russian accent while speaking English. And here I say, oh, because I'm also from a Russian speaking country where English is an additional language. So as you can see, I'm not just removing myself entirely from the discussion. I am clearly stating that, oh yes, this is so relatable, and what you're saying is definitely relatable and true for me, right? So I'm positioning myself as an EAL learner, as a Russian speaker, and also as a non-native English speaker here, because I'm saying, oh yeah, local teachers in Kazakhstan or somewhere else, right? They do not simply want to use English for meaning making, they also want to match imaginary native English speaker ideals, which can be true for many people for many different reasons, right? Because of the ideas around us, because of the ideologies that are promoted, and the things that we consume in media and our textbooks and other teaching materials. And then here, this is something more theoretical, but they mentioned code switching, right? And then I'm saying, oh, translanguaging, because this is the term that I subscribe to. This is something that I promote, right, as a scholar. So here I am basically aligning myself with translanguaging scholarship and signaling my identity. And I even provided some resources that they might want to visit or revisit on their own to learn more about something more socially just than code switching. That's all for now here. Any questions or comments about this?
No questions. We can continue.
All right. And this is the last one. So basically, first I gave feedback to about 6 students separately, right? Because I, of course, cannot focus on all 20-something students in one go. I was selecting different students each time so that I can invite them for some more discussion. And of course, other students could also see my feedback to those students, right? So by talking to those students, I wasn't really talking to just them. I was talking to the whole class. I think that in Kazakh we have that saying, right? Is that келініне сөйлеген кезде қызым сен тыңда деген сияқты айтады ғой, яғни. So I wasn't just talking to one person basically. So that's what I wanted to share. And at the end of my feedback session, I gave everyone a general feedback here by addressing them as colleagues, right? I'm not saying, hey, students, I'm saying, hello, colleagues. So I'm positioning them as equals rather than as some people that are inferior to me, right, in that context. And I'm saying it's always a pleasure to read your thoughtful post. And here, I think I talk about the importance of raising critical language awareness and how our Englishes and languages other than English are privileged and or oppressed. So here, I think I'm positioning myself as part of the community, right, as a colleague, and also I am promoting some theories, or as someone who already uses these theories in my own teaching and research, right? For example, here you can see critical language awareness. And then I'm also inviting them to reflect on how privileged and or oppressed their Englishes are and other languages are. So it means that I'm also kind of in this active process of reflecting on my privilege and my oppression as a language user, right? And again, I'm connecting this to our everyday practices, not just as teachers, but as just simply human beings, right? Who deal with everyday issues related to language outside the classroom. And again, here I'm promoting some other pedagogies again. So empowering and critical pedagogy, right? So I'm aligning myself with this pedagogy and I'm promoting myself or positioning myself as a scholar and educator who is critical and who empowers his students, right? My students. And here I'm saying we can help students capitalize on their English variety and languages other than English. And here I think I am signaling that I am a helpful teacher or I want to be a helpful teacher who does all this inclusive practices, right? So that's all for the general feedback. Let me know if you have any comments or questions. If not, we can move on to the discussion. So this is something that I wanted to do to kind of like summarize everything I said so far across all the separate feedback pieces, right? And here, let's answer the first question, which is how is the teaching assistant's feedback to EAL teachers indexical of these intersecting identities? So here, I just wanted to highlight some strategies that I used for giving feedback, right? So I was using pronouns like we, our, you, collective nouns, such as agents of change and cogs in the wheel, overt mentions of identities as an additional language user, as a non-native English speaker, and then also implicators and presuppositions. For example, I was hinting at the fact that I'm Kazakhstani, multilingual, visitor in Canada, a hopeful teacher educator, and helpful teacher, right? So these are some of the strategies that I use to signal my identities. I think it's pretty clear, but I'm sure that there could be more. This is based on a very limited time spent on data analysis while I was preparing for this presentation. But there will be more, and I'm hoping to connect all of this to some explicit literature, right? To some references. And the second question, so how do my identities shape my feedback? So I use my identities while giving feedback for this following purposes, right? So I was contextualizing my feedback through signaling my positionality. So I was saying, oh, I can relate to this because I come from a country like this. I am also like an EAL learner, just like your students and maybe you. I am also a multilingual person who uses English as an additional language and who speaks multiple languages every day or for specific purposes, right? And I'm also a visitor in Canada. So while I understand you, I cannot relate to you or something. So these were some things that I was using to contextualize my feedback and my, I guess, praise or criticism of what they were saying, right? And of course, I was relating to these teachers and their students' experiences by using specific words or identities by saying, for example, we, our, or EAL, or multilingual person, or non-native English speaker, right? Because they were bringing up all these identities either implicitly or explicitly in their own discussion posts. Although you can see their posts, but I'm sure that you can tell like the general direction they were going. Oops, what's going on? And then I was also using my identity markers to kind of provide some criticism of deficit-based identities, right? So I was saying, oh, like I also kind of aspired or used to aspire to be closer to non-native English speakers or native English as a non-native English speaker. And I think here what I was trying to do is by criticizing myself, I was using an easy target, right? Because I think it's easy to criticize yourself because no one can tell you not to do that, right? Unless they're my therapist.
Self-criticism, yeah. Serek Bolsun, you mean like self-criticism, yeah? You are talking about.
Yeah. Because I think I don't want to criticize my teachers in the classroom, right? I'd rather criticize myself and say, so I do something problematic. And maybe you also do that, but I don't want to call you out. You can also reflect and maybe learn not to aspire to be this native speaker or whatever, right? And then there's another strategy that I was using with my identities. I was displaying some desired asset-based identities, right? Or asset-based pedagogies or identities related to specific pedagogies. For example, I was displaying the fact that I want to be or I want them to be agents of change, right? I was asking or inviting them to be socially just teachers. I was inviting them to use culturally, what is this? Okay, CSP, culturally sustaining pedagogies. CLA is critical language awareness, translanguaging pedagogy. So these are the things that I promote as a scholar, right? And I want them to be users of these pedagogies or theories. And again, at the end, I think I want to highlight that all of this is very emotional, right? And by affect, I meant emotional. So I was taking a clear emotional stance regarding certain things that they were saying. So I was clearly indicating that I am someone who is hopeful because of what they are saying, right? Because of the things that they are doing. So I'm a hopeful teacher educator, and I also position myself as a helpful teacher or someone who wants to be helpful to his students. Yeah, so that's all that I want to say for today. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, right? Because there's so much more I can say if I consider a bigger data set. This is just based on one module and the feedback that I gave in one module. But I think that my purpose was to kind of promote taking a more personal approach while giving feedback to teachers, especially since they're our colleagues, right? They are not just learning about pedagogies. They have so much rich experience. Some of the teachers that I work with, to be honest, had a lot more experience than me teaching English, right? So I was inviting them to engage in a dialogue with me and critically reflect on their own practices and maybe include some theories and promote certain theories in teaching so that they are more inclusive in the classrooms while working with multilingual learners who come from let's say underprivileged backgrounds, right? They come from refugee families. They come from immigrant.
Asylum seekers might be also, refugees.
Exactly, yeah. Because you don't want to make them feel bad about their own experiences. You want them to feel included, empowered, and seen, especially in terms of their languages and cultures. You want to include those languages and cultures, and having such very critical conversations is critical, I think, or is very essential in teacher education. So by sharing all of this, I wasn't just discussing my feedback, I was also kind of inviting you to adapt certain strategies that I see as important, right? So that's all for today. Thank you so much. And at this point, I will stop speaking and invite you to ask questions. Егер сұрақтарыңыз болса, комменттеріңіз болса, айтсаңыздар болады. Сонымен бітті. Yeah.
Yeah, dear participants, ask questions. Feel free to ask and to text in our chat.
Yes.
Yes,
So-
listen, I just wanted to point out the one thing here, which you have mentioned earlier. It's about coding. By coding, you mean here, because I know that every language here is coded actually, you know, and the others here responsibility or duty is about decoding, yeah? So you mean here your purpose of coding those messages is about just, you know, I mean, your feedback, you have already mentioned. So there, your target is just to improve, to develop students' problem solving or communication skills, or just they need, I mean, audience needs to decode your coded, let's say, message. What is behind it? I mean, yeah.
Oh, thank you for your question. Are you talking about the highlights that I provided in my screenshots and so on?
There you have coded, yes, and
Okay.
so I'm talking about that.
Okay. So my purpose was to share something that I saw through my interpretive lens as a researcher, right? And what I wanted to do is just invite you to also help me engage in this data analysis, because again, everyone sees answers or codes differently, right? Because there is no same code, even if you provide the same data to multiple researchers. For example, you will look at this from a very personal perspective. I will look at it from my own standpoint as a researcher, right? So basically, I was saying, as I said earlier at the beginning of my seminar or lecture, this is not something I'm positioning as the right answer. It's just my view on the data that I see in my discussions, right? So that's my message, basically. Because I really don't like kind of treating my participants as people who don't have a say, right? You have a say in how you see my data. So yeah, it's like a dialogic community in which I want to invite everyone to participate in data analysis, co-analyze my data, basically.
Okay. Because I was wondering whether you are trying to, you know, get feedback also from them regarding this coded message and there, so it's also.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up. And honestly, I will just share how I started working on this. So there is this discourse analysis in research in education group in my university, in which we share data with other participants of the group, and they all come from very different backgrounds, but they all use discourse analysis as an analytical tool, right? And I wanted to take a somewhat similar approach, but for them, I did not provide any codes like this. I just provided my feedback and I just invited them to look at it from their own perspective. But here I provided my answers so that you could kind of take a slightly easier way to analyze my data, because I don't think that people here are familiar with discourse analysis, right? That may be a bit overwhelming for new people. So that's why I was providing my answers and inviting you to kind of think if you agree with me or if you see something else. So
okay, thank you. Yes, I was just curious regarding that coded message.
I appreciate your question and comments. Thank you so much, everyone. And if you have any further questions about what I shared today, just let me know. I can leave my contact information in the chat and we can connect.
Why not? you can share if you don't mind, and also share your presentation. Also, I just wanted to get involved in your presentation a bit more.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just shared my contact information in the chat, so you can find me at Serpost_Stambek on Instagram or LinkedIn or some other platforms. So қазақша, орысша да сұрақ қоюға болады, егер де сұрақтарыңыз болса. It's an international, multilingual, translingual community. Тек қана ағылшынша
And
сөйлеу мақсатында.
Serpost, you have already, I remember you talked about imitating or pretending like native speakers, and it seems you don't prefer that, yeah? In your teaching experience, you don't refer to that, aspect, yeah? You just, I guess you avoid even, yeah? This to imitate or to pretend, and this, because you have mentioned it a few times, not only one time.
Yeah. So again,
you don't like it.
I do research related to language ideologies and translanguaging and identities, and this topic comes up very often. And I think since it's part of my identity as a researcher, I just bring it up. And also I was just seeing it in my feedback, right? So I wasn't just saying it for the sake of saying it or criticizing those ideologies, but also because I see it in my feedback, in my data. But yeah, you're right. I definitely align with this critical stance toward standard English, because it's definitely not good. It's rooted in, let's say, colonial and racially biased
ideology, colonial ideology, stuff like that.
So yeah, thank you so much for your questions, and I hope we can connect outside this seminar. And take care, everyone. It's nighttime here, so I will have to go.
Yeah, thank you.
Dear Serpost Stambek, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your great and informative speech. Yeah, it was wonderful to see you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, and from what I know, you recorded this session, right? So
yes,
if possible,
I'm recording.
Please share the link after the recording. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.